I think it's ridiculous with the matchmaking. Like you mentioned, like you don't have any issue with Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. It's actually a really entertaining fight. I also think the same thing for Volkanovski versus Diego Lopez. It's just the fact that we're getting the interim title without Arman Tsarukyan in it, and now we're getting a guarantee that Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje winner will fight Ilia Topuria come next summer. So how long is the rightful number one contender in Arman Tsarukyan going to be out at 155? 145, you have undefeated Lerone Murphy, undefeated Movsar Evloev, and now Alexander Volkanovski's last fight was against Diego Lopez. Now he's fighting Diego Lopez again. And then that just leads you to think, going down the timeline, it's like, man, at 170, we have all these rightful contenders as well, and there's a chance that they give that. The betting favorite right now, you can get odds on that, is Kamaru Usman to fight that. So you're seeing this, we've always known meritocracy isn't the thing in this, but it's just like, man, there are rightful contenders being passed up in multiple divisions now.
Tony Ferguson's shocking pick for the UFC 324 interim lightweight title fight sent a ripple across the MMA world, because out of everyone who could give a grounded opinion on this matchup, he's one of the few who has actually been in the cage with both Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje.
You know Paddy and Justin very well. They're fighting each other for the interim belt. Who do you think wins that fight?
Paddy. Only because Justin doesn't want another interim belt. That fucker, I mean, like, that's just it. You could tell, like, as soon as, like, when we were fighting, like, I prepared for a different guy. Like, I'd be real.
Instead of backing the seasoned veteran he went 5 brutal rounds with, Tony leaned toward the rising British star, and he did it in a way that made people stop and rethink the whole fight. He believed the younger contender had something the older one didn't anymore. For Tony, this new interim belt carried a different weight for each man, and he felt Paddy's drive would show in a way Gaethje couldn't match at this stage. To Tony, the fresher fighter chasing his first belt always has a different fire than someone who has already been there and felt what temporary gold means. What stood out most was that Tony didn't hesitate. He saw Paddy entering with energy and momentum, and he imagined Gaethje walking in with a career full of wars behind him. Tony didn't doubt their talent, but he viewed Paddy as the more energized option who would treat this moment like the biggest chance of his life.
Paddy's not bad, dude. Paddy's not bad. He's very beatable, and Gaethje's very beatable as well. But when it goes into the passion and how upsetting Justin Gaethje has always been about not getting that real title shot, and they just keep dangling it right there again. I mean, shit. Paddy's in for a new treat, right? Paddy's the one that's never fought for a belt. He's going in there. He's going to be trying to, get that stuff. He's going to feel a little bit more fresher. He's going to have that little bit of excitedness, in my opinion. So if I was going to the book and I was going to try to place the bet, I mean, shit, I would go with the new kid that's going in there and that's going in there for the new opportunity, rather than the old kid that fought for the belt, disrespected it, threw it on the fucking ground, and didn't give it for it.
What made Tony's take even more interesting was how he described both fighters as beatable, but viewed Paddy as the hungrier one. He remembered how much desire a fighter has before ever touching any kind of belt, and he sensed Paddy still lived in that emotional space. He believed that Gaethje, after already holding an interim title in the past, wouldn't feel the same spark he once did. Even though he respected both fighters' heart and toughness, he felt time had changed what each man fought for. Tony's point was simple in his own way. When choosing who seemed more likely to seize a moment like this, the young contender chasing his first shot always looked more dangerous than the veteran who had been stuck right below undisputed gold for years. And despite his pick, Tony still hoped both men delivered chaos, because chaos is what a fight like this always promises.
I hope you guys are completely aware of the fact that, Paddy Pimblett is going to completely destroy Justin Gaethje in this fight. See, what we got in our hands here is yet another favorable stylistic matchup for Paddy Pimblett, for him to win, to make him look good, and for him to get his title shot, because that's what the UFC's been doing since day one, doing nothing but giving him favorable stylistic matchups and basically babying his way to a title shot. Basically, Paddy Pimblett is like the MMA version of boxing. Now, that's not meant to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to say Paddy doesn't have any skills whatsoever, but let's just be honest. If Paddy Pimblett can get Justin Gaethje in a clinch, not even a takedown, in a clinch where he can take Gaethje's back, it's game over. Gaethje has zero BJJ. Have you ever seen Justin Gaethje in his guard trying to scramble back up to his feet? No, you don't see him do that. You see him give up his back and just try to stand up. This guy is a wrestler. And even on the feet, Paddy has a very solid chin. He's got pretty good distance management. He's a pretty decent enough kicker. I do think Gaethje's going to kick the absolute legs off Paddy Pimblett. However, I do still think that Paddy's distance management is better than Justin Gaethje's. Gaethje really does not perform well when the fight's at a distance. He does much better in like a mid-boxing range where he can land his kicks for some reason. He likes to do that. But trust me when I say that not only is Gaethje going to look older and slower in this fight, most likely, he's also just going to get his back taken and submitted within the first couple rounds. I would almost guarantee it.
While Tony was leaning one way, Arman Tsarukyan was on the outside watching the entire situation unfold with frustration, building every step of the way. Arman believed he had done everything necessary to secure his place as the next title challenger. He had stepped into a title eliminator, defeated Charles Oliveira, stayed active, and even kept himself in camp for whenever the UFC called. Instead of being rewarded, he ended up pushed aside when the UFC chose Pimblett and Gaethje for the interim belt. Arman later explained that he had heard whispers about different matchups long before they were announced, but to him, none of those rumors suggested anything as surprising as Pimblett fighting for an interim title. When he finally learned that the UFC was actually booking Paddy versus Gaethje for the belt, he processed it with disbelief first, then irritation, and eventually acceptance because he had little choice.
Paddy gonna fight with Ilya Topuria in January. I already knew that 5 months ago, but I didn't know that they're gonna do interim title Gaethje and Paddy. But Ilya didn't fight, and I think this is UFC game plan. It's not like a family issue or something. They wanna make star Paddy Pimblett to bring him to fight for the title with Topuria as a bigger name and make it like a big fight, like Khabib versus Conor, but they're not. Even if he got the belt. Paddy, for me, it's a easy work. Justin, it's a easy work. Ilya, easy work. It was a hard work, Islam, but he left nobody on my level on this division right now.
Arman didn't hide his dislike for Paddy. He made it extremely clear that if they ever fought, he wouldn't go for a submission or try to play it safe. In his mind, that fight would be personal, and he pictured himself using elbows relentlessly because he wanted that kind of damage to be remembered. He didn't even trust himself to attend the Paddy versus Gaethje event in person because he felt like something would happen backstage. To Arman, Paddy represented everything wrong with how the UFC was treating the rankings and merit system, but despite all of that frustration, he still looked ahead. He had his own ambitions, and one of them was fighting Max Holloway for the BMF title. He didn't think Oliveira should be pushed back into tough fights anymore, and he respected the Brazilian legend too much to see him thrown into another high-pressure matchup. For Arman, the most exciting opportunity outside of the real lightweight belt was facing someone like Holloway in a fight fans would likely love.
Justin, if you need the help, let me know. I'll fly to you and help you.
Really?
I mean, I want him to win, and that boosted guy, I hate him. But I hope Justin Gaethje not gonna drink, party, gonna train, dedicate himself, be focused. It's his last chance in this life. He was fighting for the title maybe 5 times. So this is his chance and the end of his career. Win the interim title, fight for the real title, and then retire. That's the best for him.
While Arman vented about the situation, MMA journalist Ariel Helwani unloaded his own criticism from a completely different angle. Helwani wasn't surprised by the UFC choosing a popular figure over a ranked contender, but he believed this decision crossed into territory that made the interim belt feel almost meaningless. Did entertainment, where storylines mattered more than athletic achievement. To him, creating an interim title fight without the #1 contender was as backwards as it sounded. He saw patterns in other divisions too, where fighters with rising fame got opportunities faster than the ones putting together long winning streaks. Helwani felt the sport was drifting farther from competitive integrity and inching closer toward decisions based on showmanship.
It is not as important as an interim title fight. An interim title fight, by the way, that does not feature a #1 contender. Because the #1 contender at 155 pounds is a guy named Arman Tsarukyan, and he's not involved in this fight. And of course, the champion Ilya Topuria is not involved in this fight. This is a makeshift fight. This is as prestigious as a BMF title. God bless. I said I wanted to see Paddy fight for the belt. God bless. I said, Justin, I think you need to win a couple more. He said he was going to retire. Unless he got a title fight, I guess he's not retiring. He's fighting for an interim title. But this is a bogus fight. And it's insane to me that it is headlining over Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes. On paper, Paddy versus Justin, if Paddy wasn't fighting Ilya and Ilya's supposed to fight Arman, on paper, Paddy versus Justin is a fine fight to determine the #1 contender to fight Ilya and or Arman. Ilya won that belt back in June. I don't even think you need an interim title fight. Honestly, it should have been the co-main event, 5-round, #1 contender fight, Ilya versus Arman, second half of the year. What's the problem with that? And now what you've just said, because he reiterated this in the Instagram Live, the winner of this fight is going to fight Ilya. What happens to Arman? Arman's going to have to fight who? What is going on? What does Arman Tsarukyan have to do to get a shot at the belt now?
Michael Bisping disagreed with the criticism of the UFC's matchmaking. He felt the decisions were reasonable, arguing that Arman Tsarukyan was not the rightful next contender due to his time spent inactive earlier in the year. Instead, Bisping supported putting Paddy Pimblett in a major fight, citing Pimblett's strong positioning after his confrontation with Ilia Topuria. He also justified the inclusion of Justin Gaethje, emphasizing that despite his recent knockout loss to Max Holloway, Gaethje remains a dangerous competitor with well-rounded skills, pointing to his prior win over Rafael Fiziev as proof of his sharp form.
Obviously, he knows he's fighting in about 6 weeks, 6 or 7 weeks, whatever it is. So the man's ready, right? And he could be an interim champion of the world. Now, we know an interim champion basically means the #1 contender. But if Paddy can pull it off, unbelievable. That'll be 4 champs, 2 interims and 2 legit, well, 3 legit now with Tom being promoted from the UK that have become champions. And for Justin Gaethje, this is the final go. This is the final crack of the whip. The man's had 2 title fights in the past, Charles Oliveira to Khabib Nurmagomedov, and now he gets to go up against Paddy Pimblett. Now, talking about the matchup, of course, it is an easier fight for Justin than what it is against Khabib Nurmagomedov, one of the greatest of all time. Islam Makhachev, the current pound for pound, and according to many people, a man that is surpassing Khabib Nurmagomedov, right? So in that regard, it is an easier matchup. Will Paddy be able to take him down? Will he dance around the octagon? Yes, he will. Will he try and replicate the game plan of Max Holloway? Of course he will. Who wouldn't try and do that? You aren't going to stand and go toe-to-toe with Justin Gaethje because the man does have knockout power. But underestimate Paddy at your peril. That's all I'll say about that one, but that is a phenomenal fight.
Meanwhile, Eddie Alvarez brought his own experience to the conversation. As someone who had shared a cage with Gaethje and handed him one of the toughest losses of his career, Eddie held a unique perspective on Justin's evolution. He wasn't upset about Gaethje receiving the interim title shot. In fact, he believed Justin deserved it more than almost anyone, simply due to the strength of his resume. Eddie respected how Gaethje had spent years fighting the hardest opponents without hesitation, and he thought that kind of history still mattered. Eddie acknowledged that the UFC always operated with entertainment in mind first, but he didn't think Gaethje's placement in the title fight was unfair. What he did question was the matchmaking overall, because even though Justin's spot made sense, the pairing still felt designed to favor Pimblett's rise.
He plays into Justin's weaknesses really well if he just kind of creates some scrambles and that chaos. But I mean, I think that line's off. I think it should be more of a pick 'em.
Yeah.
Considering and also mostly considering that Justin's the stronger wrestler. You know, he has the wrestling background, you know, so like even if Paddy has good jiu-jitsu, it's like if you two wrestled, you probably wouldn't be able to get this guy down. So like we end up in a stand-up fight.
Yeah,
where I think Justin would have a serious advantage.
As all of these opinions circled around the fight, Charles Oliveira added his own breakdown of the matchup. He had first-hand knowledge of how dangerous Gaethje's striking could be, because he once stood toe-to-toe with him before finding a way to submit him. Charles believed Pimblett was capable of threatening Gaethje in the grappling exchanges, but only if he avoided getting clipped early. He said, Pimblett strikes well on his feet, can take the fight to the ground, and is constantly moving. I think Pimblett won't want to exchange blows with him. He'll probably try to take it to the ground. If he decides to exchange blows, he could be knocked out. But if he bets on the takedown, he has a chance to become champion. Still, I would really like Gaethje to come out victorious. Matt Brown echoed that same frustration, but he spoke about it from a long-term perspective. After being in the sport for decades, he had seen how promotions controlled everything from rankings to opportunities, and he felt the current direction could damage the integrity of MMA. He saw the UFC's decision as a symptom of a deeper problem. Entertaining personalities were being elevated over deserving athletes. Brown even joked that if popularity was the deciding factor, the UFC might as well replace rankings with social media follower counts. He looked at Pimblett's UFC record and pointed out how none of Paddy's recent opponents were on winning streaks, which made his sudden leap into a title fight feel completely unearned. Brown felt for Arman more than anyone else because the Armenian contender had already proven himself, only to be pushed aside by business decisions.
They're not even like, they're just basically saying Paddy's more popular, you're getting it over Arman.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, right? And that's I mean, God, I hate like how I kind of get into this too much, but I mean, that's really like, that's the definition of, you know, monopoly, where a single promoter owns the title and the rankings. and that's not it's not a good thing for the sport, in my opinion. And I have to question what it's going to do for the longevity of the sport. I don't think in the short term it's really going to make a big difference, right? Like, it's going to sell the next fight, right? It's going to sell the next pay-per-view. But trends tend to come and go, right? Fads tend to come and go. At some point, like, to have staying power and lasting power, I think it requires, a meritocracy-based system. It's going to require, some, if you want to bring in guys like Armin Sarukian or Movsar Evloev, I always mess up how I say his name. You want to bring in these Olympic wrestling level guys. I mean, they don't want to have to go out there and put on some ridiculous show to become a champion. They don't want to have to go on Instagram and start a podcast and make whatever kind of skits on social media and this silly kind of stuff. Like, they just want to be a world champion because they want to be the best athlete. And that's what makes me wonder how the staying power is going to be, right? When you're dealing with guys that are, legitimate athletes that want to be legitimate athletes, and they're getting passed up by guys that are entertainers.
All of these perspectives, from fighters to analysts to former champions, painted a full picture of the reaction surrounding the interim lightweight title fight. Some respected the matchup, others hated it, and many felt the UFC had traded fairness for attention. Yet, through all the disagreements and frustrations, the same idea kept surfacing. The upcoming fight between Justin Gaethje and Paddy Pimblett isn't just a clash of styles or personalities, but a moment that showed how much the sport was changing. Whether fans loved the direction or hated it, UFC 324 had become one of the most debated events in recent memory.